And it takes a while to realize that it's not, the golden rule was treat everybody like you want to be treated. That's not actually the rule that you want to follow. You want to follow the rule of treat everybody like they want to be treated. And that can be quite different.
Hi, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On the show, you get my conversations with peak-performing thought leaders, creatives, and entrepreneurs. We explore how you can innovate through creativity, compassion, and collaboration. I believe that innovation combined with compassion and creative thinking can save the world, and I aim to bring you ways you can do it too. If you're enjoying the show, I'd be super grateful if you can support it by buying me a cup of coffee. You can buy me a cuppa at buymeacoffee.com/Isolde. And now, let's get on with the show. Hey there, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg, and I am so happy that you're here. I'm also really honored and happy to introduce you to this week's guest, Rochelle Marie. Listen to this. This is so cool. Rochelle Marie has worked from entry-level roles to leadership positions twice, once after a 12-year career gap to raise her kids. And she doesn't pretend to be someone she's not. Oh, and I love this. She hasn't lost her sanity after one too many stories from career moms who were literally vomiting on the way to work due to toxic managers. But she did decide enough was enough. Rochelle is my kind of woman with her degree in psychology, post-grad diploma, and career development, and her entrepreneurial spirit. She now empowers and inspires women to get their leadership role where they can make a difference. Oh, Rochelle, you are singing my song. Thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Isolde. It's a pleasure to be here.
I am a survivor of toxic managers, so hearing about this from you, talking to you, getting an opportunity to chat with you about what that process was like for you is so great. What happened to you that made you go, you know what? I'm done. I'm going to make a change. What was the turning point for you when you decided to make those changes?
So, yeah, thanks for that question. I think the turning point was exactly that moment where this young lady, she's a mum, she'd been back in the workforce for a while, and reached out to me. We'd been in a workshop together, and one of the strengths I have is relator. If anyone's done the Clifton strengths, my top one is relator. So I tend to draw conversations from women that I may not know all of that well. And she gave me a call and just sort of asked for my input. It wasn't asking for help. And I really appreciate that because I'm not a counselor or anything. But she asked for my input about how to deal with her manager and told me the story about how she'd been driving to work that morning and had to pull over and vomit because she was that tied up in knots about turning up to another day with a manager who was just belittling and treating her with absolutely no respect at all. And my heart broke. It wasn't the first story I'd heard like that. It was probably the worst story at that stage, but it certainly wasn't the first. And I'd been through enough of it myself to really resonate with what she was saying and what she was going through. And it just got to that point where I was like, it's too prevalent still that we have leaders in all of our organizations who haven't been shown how to lead in this century. They may still be leading from, something that would have worked in the 50s or 60s, but it doesn't work anymore. And no one's showing them. I'm not blaming managers entirely either. No one's showing them the right way to show up in this century. And so when she told me that story, I helped her as best I could. I sort of gave her a few resources to turn to, and she was doing all the right things anyway. But I just thought, no, this is, something's got to happen. Someone's got to do something. And why not me? So that was really where the journey started. And at the same time, I was running a circle of women across different agencies in my industry. I'd brought them together and we'd been working together for a year, sort of in a group setting and a coaching circle. And these women were like, they're amazing. I just loved every one of them. They all bring this strength and caring and working together, and this passion for growing as people and learning and becoming better leaders. And they were all in roles that weren't actually leadership roles. They were that level underneath, just before you break through into sort of that middle management role. So some of them had staff they were leading, some of them didn't, but they were just below that middle management role. And I looked at all of them and I'm like, why are you not the managers that, that our people are dealing with, rather than these toxic or difficult bosses that we so often have? So I sort of put those two things together and I'm like, okay, I can't go out there and change all of the toxic bosses into good bosses as much as I would like to. That's not something that I'm good at. But what I can do is work with these women at this level. I call it below the glass shelf. So rather than the glass ceiling, where we all tend to, we talk about that top level that we can't break through as women, there's a level between being a really good individual contributor and becoming a manager, where a lot of women just don't make it to that next level and they need to step out from under that glass shelf. And that's what I decided to do, is help women step out from under that glass shelf and get into that leadership role, so that they can start making a difference and people can stop turning up to work having vomited on the way there.
I'm so glad you're doing the work you're doing. It's amazing to me. It is crucial and critical. I think that notion of stepping from being what you called an individual contributor to someone who takes on a more leadership-oriented role is fantastic. And I have so many questions, one of which is, what has to happen in the mindset of the individual woman to be able to go, yeah, I've got this, I can do it, and then step into that role, like, in addition to all of the work that has to happen on the outside? In other words, within the company organization, what does a woman have to do on the inside? What's the work that she has to do inside her own self and her thoughts about her abilities and her thoughts about her sort of presence, if you will, to be able to step into those bigger leadership roles?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and it's, to me, it is the biggest piece that we still need to work with. I found, as an up and coming leader, that I was sent on leadership course after leadership course, and they all taught me the skills that I needed to be a leader. So, I learned how to do difficult conversations and how to do communication and all that kind of stuff. And so I thought, okay, I know all these things. Why am I still not moving up? And I realized over time, and a lot of thought and introspection and looking at what else was going on in the corporate world, that big parts of it is my own mindset. And so that's what I definitely work a lot on, that with women. There's a few things that I find happen again and again. One is based around confidence. I think that's a really big piece, and it's something that I see we have at certain stages of our lives, and often as mothers in particular, when we step out of the workforce, we lose a little piece of ourselves that up until then, we have sort of tied to our ego often, where we might be on a career track in our younger years. We become pregnant, we step out to look after our kids, whether that's 6 months, 12 months, or 12 years in my case. It it sort of, you then need to untwine your ego from that career track that you were on, and with that goes a little bit of your confidence. And then the longer you are out of the workforce, the more of that confidence, when you step back in, it's sort of missing, and we need to really work on reclaiming it again. It's not gone altogether. We still have, we still have some confidence. We're a mother. We've done a lot with our kids, so we have some confidence. But I think that corporate confidence steps out a little bit, and we need to reclaim it. So that's a big mindset shift that a lot of women work on. I think the other one is a little bit, it's sort of entwined with that, but it's also looking at letting go of worrying about how other people judge us or what other people are thinking about us. So we spend a lot of time, I have clients that talk about, oh, well, I'm not, particularly English is my second language. So, I'm not going to be a good leader because other people aren't going to want to work with me because they don't, I'm not fluent in English. Even though they talk perfectly fine, they have an accent and, sometimes their grammar might be slightly different, but like they're amazing. They can already speak two languages. So they're clearly, their intelligence level is pretty damn good to start with. But there's just that thought of what are other people looking at me, and we take that on board. And so we change our behavior based on what we think other people want from us. And I think that's a big piece of, again, reclaiming who we are as a person and authentically, and just being able to step into that unapologetically, like not worrying about what other people are thinking about us. I think the thing I've learned is that people don't think about us that much to start with. And when they do, they're going to judge us one way or another. It doesn't matter what we do. We are going to be judged just like we judge other people all the time. And so letting go of changing ourselves in order to be not judged because we're going to be judged anyway, I think that's a big piece of work that we go through as well.
That's so fascinating. And I was thinking about what you said. I agree with you completely about the confidence piece, and that's one I've thought about and talked about before. But this idea of releasing judgment about what others think of us, or releasing the amount of importance we place on what somebody else thinks of us or judges us, here's something that I'd love it if you would mind talking about for a second. What I think of humans is we like to put everything into categories. This is plastic, this is glass, this is a plant, whatever. Whatever it is, we inherently categorize. My issue with categorization isn't that we categorize, but it's the value judgments we place on them. So what are your thoughts about those kinds of notions when it comes to people in leadership, especially women in leadership? Because yes, you are a woman and you're a leader, but that doesn't make you any better or worse than somebody else who wasn't a leader because you were in different categories. Does that flow for you, or does that still bring up some sort of a warning bell?
Yeah, good question. I think as humans, not only do we judge each other, but we generally judge other people as less than us, particularly if they're different. We just see differences as less than. That's a normal human behavior, and it's something that we, again, with mindset, we need to work on that and understand that people are just different. I think there's some truth sometimes in that, though, where you can look at a leader and say, well, your leadership skills are not helpful to the people that you're leading right now. And then you can look at your own leadership skills and recognize where you are going to bring value as a woman and as a mother, where that person, whether they're a woman and a mother as well, have just not got it. They just haven't, like I said, it's not necessarily their fault. They just haven't been trained and supported well. So I think, yes, there is truth in that we are all different and not necessarily better. But then there is also sometimes a better way of doing things just naturally, in saying that it doesn't work for everybody. So some people really, well, I don't want to say that. I was going to say some people really do like to be belittled, but they really don't. So that one I think we can leave behind. But some people do like to be micromanaged, and, most people don't. But some people actually like that. So, there is sort of, I guess, a wariness in saying that this style of management is better than that style of management. I think you can say, though, that this style of management is better in most situations than that style of management.
And it's interesting to me hearing what you're saying. I'm thinking about respect. Respect seems to be the word that is sort of the patina over everything that you're saying, that the management style isn't as much of an issue perhaps, but whether or not you respect the people who are working on the team with you and then leading them in the way that's best for them through that seems to be the way to go. How does that flow in your understanding of a leader's role?
Yeah, that I think that's exactly it, and I talk about that a lot in both leadership style and communication style, and it's all about the other person, and it's not about you, and that can be really difficult because I think we look at ourselves and think everybody thinks and behaves the same way we do, and it takes a while to realize that it's not, the golden rule was treat everybody like you want to be treated. That's not actually the rule that you want to follow. You want to follow the rule of treat everybody like they want to be treated. And that can be quite different than what you want to be treated. So yeah, I think you're entirely right. It's about being a leader is about understanding that everybody is different and you need to work with them on a one-to-one basis to find out what motivates them, what inspires them, what gives them focus, what style of communication. Do they want dot points or do they want all of the information? Those are the things that as a leader you bring to the table, and that's how you're going to have amazing followers, that want to follow you wherever you go because they love working with you.
And that's so interesting that you said that you have to do it. You know how they want to be led. And because of that, it sounds like you increase both the relationship and also kind of the loyalty that people will follow leaders who they feel will respect them. And the question that I have about that is when we're in this kind of situation, when you're in a situation where you need to lead people and everyone maybe on your team has different strategies that work for them, how do you not drive yourself crazy as a leader? What do you do? What are the strategies that you as a leader need to implement in order to not go nuts trying to lead people who might all have very different ways that they need to be led?
Yeah, again, I think that comes back to mindset, and it is just that idea of respecting people. So you shift your mindset from, oh, I've got to do all of the changes to, okay, I'm going to work with this one person, and I'm going to work with this one person, and I'm going to work with this one person. So I think, it can be quite difficult being a manager where you're more task orientated than people orientated. That takes a little bit more of a mindset switch to put the people first and for you to change your way of behaving with them. I think often as leaders we expect those that are following us to change their behaviors. If I, for example, like to be communicated with dot points and I don't want all of your long explanation, then I'm like, well, that's on you. I didn't, I'm not going to read that whole big email. So resend it to me with dot points. And that's okay. It's great for you to understand what works for you, but then you work with the person and say, okay, let's work this out. Let's compromise. I recognize that you want to send me all of the information because that makes you feel comfortable and like, you're sure you've covered everything. I don't need that. I just want the dot points. So how about we compromise and you put some dot points at the top, all of the rest of the information at the bottom. Recognize I'm probably not going to read it, but you get bragging rights later on to say to me, yeah, I did tell you that. So that may be based on a true story.
Oh, yes, this may or may not be an actual real situation. So, okay. You work with women, and it sounds like a lot with mothers. Okay, this might be a strange question, but why do we need more women in leadership like work? And I know that's a stupid question even as I ask it, and I realize it because of course we need more women in leadership. But the question is, what are the reasons that women make good leaders? I think that's an even better question, actually. What do you think are the reasons women make good leaders?
I think there's many now, and I think that interestingly to me, COVID has shown how powerful women can be as leaders and the skills that they bring to leadership, particularly in times of crisis. Apparently, these are the skills that we really need in times of crisis. But I think we're in a perpetual state of crisis anyway, even without a pandemic, a global pandemic. There's always a crisis. There's always something that's coming at us. The world is moving faster and faster, and things are changing faster and faster. So it almost feels like we're just in this one big ball of crisis. And I think that's the difference between, the 50s, 60s styles of leadership that worked really well back in that manufacturing age, where everybody needed to fall in line and do the same thing at the same time, to this age now where it's a lot more fuzzy. There is no one size fits all approach to work. And so women as leaders, we bring naturally most, and this is stereotyping, because not all women are the same and not all men are the same, but women, whether through genetics or society and culture, and it's probably a combination of both, tend to be more collaborative. So we tend to work with people more and bring them along with us rather than, do as I say and don't look at what I'm doing while I'm saying it. So we do tend to be more collaborative. We do tend to have more natural empathy, and that's a big topic in the last sort of decade around that emotional intelligence piece. That does normally come easier for women to be able to put themselves in other people's shoes. And that it definitely helps around that, treat each person as an individual and work with them how they like to be worked with. That becomes more naturally easy for women than it does men. Again, stereotyping. So collaboration, empathy, we are still, as women, we still need to embrace masculine traits. And this is where I think, men need to embrace feminine traits, women need to embrace masculine traits. So the typical masculine traits are more around drive and ambition and goal setting and doing. And then women will sort of embrace that because we've been brought up with that as the leadership skills. That's what we've been told are the leadership skills we need. So we do tend to, on the career track, we do tend to bring them on, and we're very good at drive and doing the things that need to be done. But we also get to naturally bring in that collaboration and empathy, and just more likely to bring along other people with us, to share the credit, to work as a team rather than just follow me because I said so.
I'm taking all of this in. I'm taking a second. Those are phenomenal skills. And I think it's so interesting that you say that women tend to exhibit some of those talents and skills more naturally than men might. Again, recognizing the broad generalization, stereotyping, and all of that. And yet, some of that assertiveness, some of that ambition, if a woman wants to take control of her own career, it's sort of, for example, you worked in the home for 12 years, and then you leveled up and went out and became a leader again, and you went, this is something I want. This is something I deserve. This is something I'm going to work for. And then you went out and did it. So when you're a woman and you want to get to that place, or maybe you do get to that place and you go, okay, I'm taking control. What do you need to do to take control of your path, your career path specifically? Maybe life path if you talk about that with your clients, but what do you need to do as a woman to take control of your career to really become the guiding force of what your contribution will be to the world?
Yeah, I think it is about, one is recognizing that you have that need and it's okay to have that need. I definitely have always been like, I've had an ambition in me from very early on. And I don't want to say competitiveness because I don't think it is that. It's always been about being like beating your personal best is kind of how I see it. And so I don't apologize for that. And there are times in my life where I have been judged for that. And I guess that was one of the things that I needed to work through, was letting go again of that worry about what other people are judging me for, because I recognized that whether I had been a stay-at-home mum, a career mum, a business mum, and I'd been all of that while raising the kids and working in the home. I did work jobs, and I did actually start businesses during that time. They weren't careers. My jobs were very much geared around, after hours and weekends, so retail, hospitality, so that the kids were with their dad, in the hours that I was working. But stepping out of that career focus was quite a big deal to me. So I think part of it is owning it and recognizing that it's part of you and that that's okay. And then it is to me again about being unapologetic about that at work as well. And I think sometimes because society sort of says to us, they used to say girls can do anything and can have it all, and then they kind of backed that off and said, well, we may be saying that, but we don't really mean it, so you're going to have to choose. And now I think we're in this sort of weird space where on the surface, we're told, yes, you can have a career and a family and, you can do it all, but there's not really a balance. There's a flow to it. And that I agree with. And it all sounds very good, but I have also, I recognize that there are still unconscious biases in the workplace, where, if you're a mum going back from maternity leave and you're back on 3 days a week, for example, instead of full time, people don't think you're serious about your career. Or if you even just having a family, even if you're back full time, there are many people that still unconsciously think, oh, well, of course she'll be focused on her family first, so this career isn't going anywhere. So there's not only the internal mindsets that we've got to deal with, there are actual external biases that come in at the workplace. So I think in those instances, to me, it is, again, about being unapologetic about your desire to have a career and letting people know that you are there for your career. That's not to say that you're not there for your family, but recognizing that, yes, there are biases in the workplace. Unfortunately, we do need to do a little bit of our own work to combat those biases. And to me, that's just about owning that confidence, owning that ambition and want to do more and be more and make a difference in whatever way it is that you choose to make a difference, and sort of be quite clear about that so that people aren't left with doubt. Because I think where there's doubt, that's where on occasion you won't get promoted, because they have this, again, unconscious, and not doing it consciously, but they have this unconscious bias that, oh, well, she's got kids, so that's where her loyalties lie. And you need to sort of show that you are more than capable of having loyalties lie in multiple directions.
I know that there are unconscious biases for sure. And I know, even though I don't have to, I've felt some unconscious bias just as long as I'm a woman in the workforce. When you talk about that sort of being able to state for sure, I'm here for my career. Yes, I'm here for my family, of course, and I'm here for my career. I'm here for the track I've chosen. What are some strategies that women can take, and specifically women, since that's who you work with? What are some strategies that women can implement to communicate to the people in their company or organization that they've chosen their career, that is their path?
So I think it's a lot of internal work so that we just show up with that intention, because that does come across. I think sometimes when we're not clear ourselves, and when we're feeling, as mothers, I want to do, we feel guilty about that career track. We sort of then emanate that guilt a little bit. So I think the first step is really, again, owning it and being clear on yourself, because then you show up that way, and it kind of radiates out of you. And so they're less likely to latch onto that unconscious bias, because it's not sort of, you're not giving them part of it, which I think we do a little bit. So I think that's one. What I don't think we need to do as women and mothers and people in general is give our soul to our organizations to say that we're serious about our careers. What I don't think we need to do is work all hours. In fact, studies have shown that women who work longer hours as in I think it's over 60 hours a week, which is super long, are less likely to be promoted than women that work, just reasonable hours. And I think, again, that goes to unconscious biases and people thinking, oh, if she's working that many hours, what's she doing with her family? And, I'm not on board with that part of it, but I am on board with us having really strong boundaries about, yes, I'm serious about my career. I'm also serious about my family. I am a really good worker. I'm here focused in my work hours, but my work hours end at 5 o'clock or whatever it is for you. In an emergency, you can get me. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow morning. So I think, again, it to me, it is more owning it within yourself, owning it while you're at work, and having no doubt in your mind that you're in the right place when you're at work, and that you have the ability and the inner mindset and work that you've done will make you an amazing leader. And they are, if they don't see that, that's on them. Like, really own that, because you know it. And then that, I think, helps to lessen those unconscious biases, because you're not unconsciously putting out different vibes for them. So I think that's part of it. And then having conversations with your manager to let them know, hey, here's my track that I'm wanting to go down. I really want to get into this particular role here. What do I need to do? What are the skills that I've got, that will help me get there? And what are the gaps that I've got that I'm missing? So don't just sit there and think, I'm going to work really hard and people are going to notice and that's going to get me to the next place and, get me past these unconscious biases. You need to, one, own it, and then two, just let people know what your intentions are, and call on their help, because people love it when you call on their help. It's good for their egos. So I definitely recommend, like any manager that you have, even if they're not particularly a good manager, it's still really good to ask for their help and get them on side and get them sort of really clear as to where you want to go. Then they are unconsciously able to sort of listen and go, oh, I remember she talked about that the other day. This sounds like a good opportunity for her to, get better at that skill or get visible in this particular area, or whatever it might be that will help you get to that next level.
This is going to sound like a bizarre question, but maybe not. What happens in those kinds of situations when you go and you talk to your boss, your manager, you communicate those things? This is the track I want to go on. What happens if they don't agree? How do you handle it as a person, as a woman or not a woman, if the manager you talk to says, well, that's not the track I see you going in or the one I want you to go on? How do you handle something like that if what you decided you want doesn't jive with what they want for you?
So I think the first thing in that is to understand that everybody interprets and perceives things differently. And so there's no truth or fact in that. It's just opinion. And I would personally listen very closely to what it is they have to say, because maybe you're not seeing something that they're seeing. And when you listen to them, perhaps the path that they talk to you about is more aligned with who you naturally are and you just haven't seen it. However, you also need to be, really wary that just because they're saying it doesn't make it true. You get to choose what you take on as your truth. There's no absolute truth in that, but what you take on as your truth and what you're going to do with that information. So if the person you're talking to, if your manager is someone that you have a lot of respect for, and that you have seen them sort of have those conversations with others perhaps, or you recognize that they really are a perceptive person, then you might want to put more weight on what they're saying than if you look at that person and go, well, there is no way I want to be like you. You are not the person that I'm looking for as a mentor or for inspiration. And therefore I hear what you're saying, but I'm not taking it on board. So that's you can actually consciously make that decision as to what you will take on board from others and what you want. And for me, it is mostly based on, do I want to be like you? And if the answer is no, then the chances are I'm not going to take your feedback on, or your, your perception of me on. From there, I start to look elsewhere for that. Who is it that I want to be like? Like, who is showing the leadership skills that I really admire? And I see others following them, not because of the role they're in, but because of the person they are. And so I will purposely find those people and start to build a relationship with them. It may be slow going, depending on, your 6 degrees of separation. How close are you to that person right now? You need to, maybe start slow and connect with them on LinkedIn and build up. But in other cases, it's someone that you've already worked with in the past and you've really admired. And I have on occasion gone to someone like that and said, look, I really admire you. And you seem like a guiding light to me. And I would really like you to step in and be my mentor, because I'm wanting to get to this next level. And, I'm not at the moment getting traction with my manager, wording that in a nice way so that you're not putting your manager down, but just sort of saying, I'm looking for someone that I admire that can help guide me in the direction that I'm wanting to go. If that person still says, hey, I don't see that for you, that's not the path that I see for you, then you might want to start listening. But if just one person's saying it, be really mindful of where they're coming from and who they are before you start taking that on board.
I love that you call it taking that on board. Like it's not you. It's something you've taken on and can theoretically put back down. And it takes a certain amount of confidence to be able to do all of the things. When we start talking about confidence, but it takes a certain amount of confidence to be able to do all of these things that you mentioned as strategies. Do you have any tips that someone who's looking for or coming to a leadership role for something like that, can you give any tips on how to build some of that confidence, especially if they're not feeling confident and strong and purposeful? What are some ideas on how they might be able to build confidence in order to be able to take those steps?
Yeah. So there's a few that I've got that I work with my clients on. And I think the first step is to recognize that that's what you want to work on, that you could do with some more confidence. And, so you start working on your inner you, because I think particularly in corporate, we are so often told about the hard skills that we need to work on. And we're not that often given advice or guidance on who we are as a person and the soft skills that we want to work on. So I think sort of recognizing that that's an area that could do with some help is the first step. And then really taking steps to do that inner work. And it's not an overnight thing. This is, it's a months long, years long, continuous journey of working on yourself. And it's kind of like that onion idea of if you peel back a layer and find this new improved you, and then there's a whole lot more layers underneath that you can continue to peel back and grow, and grow in confidence and in who you are. But specifically for confidence, there is that idea of fake it till you make it. That can work to a certain extent, but it sort of leads to that imposter syndrome feeling, I think, when you're faking it till you make it, and it can be quite stressful. So I think there's occasions where, yes, you need to pull that card out, but I think you need to start working on real, authentic, I am who I am, and I like who I am, and I am not going to be apologetic about who I am. And so therefore my ideas are valid, and it's okay for me to speak up and voice my ideas in meetings, for example, because that's often where women, lack confidence and will just sort of sit there and smile and nod and not be forthright with their ideas. So there are a number of techniques to getting there. I do think working on yourself as a whole really lends itself to growing in confidence. The more you understand yourself, the more confident you become. One of the ways that I really resonated with, to sort of, I guess it's a cross between fake it till you make it and then actually making it in confidence, is the is the idea of the alter ego, and some people will have heard of this, and for me it was quite new when I first heard of it not that long ago, and I was like, wow, I love this, I want everyone to do this. So I, if you haven't heard of an alter ego, it's basically looking again at the people that you admire the most, that you think, if I could be like them, I'd feel like that's me, that's the traits that I want to show, that's who I want to embody. Not looking at one person, though. I think that's a trap that we can fall into, and we'll look at one person and sort of almost become them, and then we're no longer ourselves, and so it's not a real authentic and a confidence. It's a confidence built on how we see somebody else. But taking into account three probably people, looking for three people that you think, yes, I love the way she shows up, I love the way she cares for people, I love the way she her smile is radiant, or she speaks her mind and I really enjoy that. She does that without berating people, or without sounding like she's got a big ego. So whatever those traits are, having a look at them, being intentional and saying, okay, those are the traits that I want. And then really starting to feel into those traits. And, when she speaks in that way that I really like, what is it that she's doing? How is it that she's showing up? What does that feel like if I try that on in me? And so I did that practice. I built out an alter ego of a mishmash of traits, definitely around being more confident, and even like changing your walking style can help in I guess sort of that fake it till you make it. But with an alter ego, because you practice embodying it and feeling it, you eventually do become it. And I think there's a sort of brain-based science behind that, where the traits that we see in others are generally latent within ourselves. It's not so easy to see traits in others that we admire that we've never had. They are there somewhere. They're just not showing that much at the moment. So when we start embodying them, it's almost like we're reclaiming them, as opposed to becoming a new person. We're reclaiming and bringing out these traits that we've sort of hidden away in us. And I think I noticed this I have a teenage son, and at some stage in his life, he obviously picked up on the fact that other people were judging him. And again, people always have been and always will be judging him, but this clicked in his mind at some stage. And literally overnight, he's quite tall, and he went from just walking like a, gangly teenage boy to hunching over his shoulders and trying to make himself smaller. And it was a little bit heartbreaking. Thankfully, it didn't last for long, because we kind of noticed and pointed it out to him, and he hadn't even realized that that's what he was doing. And I find that often as women, we do that too, right? We make ourselves smaller. We don't want to take up space. We don't want to be seen as much. And so embodying confidence and holding yourself tall and shoulders back and walking with sort of that sense of purpose, that's kind of what I'm talking about, is feeling into it and embodying it, and just through that you end up becoming it. And so my lovely alter ego Raquel, who I named, which I encourage you to do, because it's helpful to have a sort of third person alter ego. Raquel used to step up when I needed her in a particular situation. So if it was the first time I was doing something, so for example, if I had to give a speech in front of a couple of hundred people at work, I've done that reasonably often, but always, had that real fear and wanting to hide and go back to sitting at my desk rather than speaking in front of a couple of hundred people. And when I was able to call on Raquel, it all just became so much lighter, and I became so much more like I walked onto stage with my shoulders back, and my message was heard easier coming from that place. and it landed with more people than it used to when I felt like I really didn't want to be there. So yeah, there's a little bit more to that, and I do have a course that people can take should they wish to, which we can talk about later. But it's I found the alter ego one of the most the easiest ways and the most pleasurable ways to increase my confidence really, really quickly.
That's phenomenal. I love that. I wrote a book on communication called Speak from Within, and I talk about knowing your role. And you took it one step further. You created a whole other role. I think that's phenomenal. What a great idea. I know. I know you're in Australia, I'm in the USA and in New York City, and I could keep you here all day asking you questions because you're fascinating and I love the way you think. And I know that you actually have a day to get to, so I don't want to keep you too long. But I was wondering, actually, before you mentioned this course that you have, which I think is great, that you're making that available to people to learn how to do this. But would you mind sharing the URLs for how people could find, if someone wants to learn more about you or about how your leadership of programming works, and if they want to find you on Facebook, Instagram, would you mind sharing a couple of URLs so that I can put those in the show notes, and also so that, well, it'd be great to have you say what they are for people who learn differently.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I would love people to find the confidence mini course because I really think it's the start of something new. So they can find that through my website if they go to herleadershipway.com, and that's way spelled WAY.com. The confidence course is there. It's free to sign up for. So I would highly encourage people to do that. And there's more about the alter ego and how to embrace her in that space. And then there's another few things on there for them to have a look at as well. Socials, I am on Insta. It is a new thing for me, so I'm not on there in a big way, but you can find me there at Rochelle Marie _HLW for Her Leadership Way. And then the place where I really hang out is my Facebook group. So if you go to the website herleadershipway.com, there is a link from there directly to the Facebook group, and you can join us in that group. It's an amazing group of women. You will find inspiration and support and growth and connection in there. So highly encourage you to come and join us and have some fun.
Fabulous. Rochelle, I'm so grateful that you've shared such wisdom and knowledge, and I'm really, really thrilled that you were able to join me for this episode. Is there anything else you would like someone who's listening to know right here and right now? Before I ask you my last silly little question that I ask everybody who comes on the show.
I think that the one thing that I really want women to know in particular is that it is okay to own this ambition. If you have, a drive to get out there and make a difference, whether it's as an entrepreneur or whether it's in your career or whether it's a mum who's driving things in the family, it's okay to own that ambition and to do something about it. And to focus on you for a change, because I know how big we are at focusing on other people. So if I could get everybody to recognize that it's okay to be, practice self-care and be self-aware, then I would be thrilled that we all get to live our best lives. That's what I would love to leave everybody with, is just own it and run with it.
It's funny that you said all of that because the last question, you're probably going to say the same thing, but I'm going to ask it anyway. This is so great. So yeah, this is the question. It's a silly little question that I ask everyone who comes on the show. And I find that even though it's kind of silly, the answers can be often quite profound. And the question is this: if you had an airplane that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
Oh, that is tricky. Uh, I think it would be around that same outcome, is just own your life and live it, because I think particularly having teenagers in the house who spend far too long playing video games. It's one of the big rants that I have lately is, we only get this one life. So if I had a skywriter, it would be get this life and go out and live it.
Ah, that's great. That's so great, Rochelle. Thank you so much. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for doing the work that you're doing to help women assume and thrive in leadership positions. It's so necessary, and it's wonderful that you're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a really enjoyable conversation. I really
Oh,
appreciate it.
it was for me too. This is Isolde Trachtenberg for the Innovative Mindset Podcast. If you're liking what you're hearing, let me know. Leave a comment or a review on the show wherever you listen. I would love to hear from you. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg reminding you to listen, learn, laugh, and love a whole lot. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new. And if you like what you're hearing, please review it and rate it and let other people know. And if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, I'd love to meet you on patreon.com/innovative mindset. I also have lots of exclusive goodies to share just with the show's supporters there. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2021. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, keep living in your innovative mindset.